Hey there, welcome to another episode of the Rocket MSP podcast. I am Steve Taylor, your host. I'm joined by Kris Shoemaker from Cavelo. Welcome, Kris. How you doing, man?
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, yeah. So I gotta ask, you got four guitars and a bass guitar and a drum kit behind you.
Yeah.
Um, do you just look cool, or are you actually cool?
Definitely not actually cool. Trying my best to look cool. I barely play them. I would consider myself a hack with great intentions, not a musician.
I would say I relate to that. Sometimes with my old background, you guys would see my guitar. Once the new house is done being built, maybe I'll be able to hang up all the guitars and drum kits and everything behind me, and you guys will see what I'm all about. But no, I totally relate to that, man. And I gotta say, I love your office. I jest when I say you're just pretending to be cool, but you've got some great looking guitars hanging up there.
Yeah, I have the disadvantage of being left-handed, so my selection.
Me too.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Twinsies.
So, and I'm sorry, guys. I promise we're gonna get into the demo in like 2 minutes. Okay, so stick around. This isn't gonna be long. So, a place that I like to buy my gear from, Kris, is Rondo Music, Rondo, and they have the most obscure no-name guitars that you've ever heard of. I bought a 5-string electric bass for $140, and it sounds chef's kiss, man. It's so good. Um, so I was on the worship team at church, and the worship pastor didn't believe a $140 5-string bass would sound good at all, let alone this one sounds fantastic. So check out Rondo Music. They've got some great gear. They're not going to say it, but it's basically knocking off the big brands. The same type of woods, the same type of finishes you would expect. So yeah, very, very happy with that company.
Cool. Something for everybody on this podcast, right? Little music advice, little
yes
demo.
the prices have gone up since the pandemic. Just the way of the world, right? But
Yeah.
so you're not going to get $140 5-string bass out of them now, but they still have some great stuff, and you'll get something that's comparable to like a $1,500 Gibson for like $600. Like it's great.
Great.
So, cool. All right. Well, hey, so tell me about Cavelo. What exactly is Cavelo?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a very good question. We are designed specifically for MSPs in North America and cyber advisors to bring some key features and functionality to their customers that they may not have had access to before, or may not have had access to in a way that is affordable to the subset of customers that they typically work with, and can still make money at. Because let's face it, that's why everybody's doing it, right? I mean, there's got to be some money in it, and we're trying to solve for that. And the main high-level overview of what we are is a data insights and visibility platform. So we do three main things: automated data discovery and classification of your customer's data in their environment, no matter where it lives; vulnerability management scanning, in order to find how the devices that house the stuff that has already been found and classified as private, sensitive, and important might be demonstrating vulnerabilities; and identity access management. So we can demonstrate who in that customer environment for the MSP has access to the things that we have demonstrated are their crown jewels, and show what they've been doing with those things over time. So really, these are not things that the customer knows or can tell the MSP, and until recently is a very difficult thing for an MSP to know and to bring that information to their customers so they can have some chats about where their crown jewels lives, how they're vulnerable, who's got access to it, so that they can make some smart decisions about how to protect it.
Okay. So I'm going to put my MSP. Let's start technical. I'm going to put my systems engineer hat on. So how does Cavelo ensure the security and privacy of sensitive data handled by the platform?
So we take a different tact. And what I mean, I'll unpack that for you, is we are not an active defense platform. There are many out there. Many MSPs have chosen their preferred set of what we would consider bricks in the castle wall for defense, other platforms, and so on. We would consider that if you look at the spectrum of left and right of boom, which of course people understand these days in the cybersecurity world, the boom being the cybersecurity incident, a lot of those platforms that are bricks in the castle wall play on the right side of that security incident. Philosophically, we're on the left. We are trying to give the MSP some power, insights, and visibility to make proactive remediation decisions about what's happening in their customer environment with their important things and how those things are vulnerable and who's got access to those things in advance of a cybersecurity incident in order to drive down the potential for the incident to happen in the first place or lessen its severity if it does happen.
Okay.
We would marry very well, Steve, with any of the, let's call it MDR, EDR, XDR, SIM like products that are more block and tackle like tools, because we provide the insights to allow them to be better focused. And the reason I say that is everybody puts up their castle wall, Steve. Everybody forgets to ask themselves, what are we trying to protect? And how do we best do that? And that's where we come in.
Gotcha. Okay. So can we see it? It sounds like a neat product. And okay, so what I'm going in three different directions right now is my problem. Sorry.
That's all good.
I'm gonna put your screen up here.
Sure.
There we
There we
go.
go. All right. So ask questions where you feel appropriate as I go through this. I'm going to just
Yeah.
run through a high level overview of what the platform is, how it works, and how that might be useful to an MSP or cyber advisor in North America. So we've landed first on our summary screen. Okay, so this is where you can get all the high level understanding of what's going on in the environment. The heat map that we have here on the left is trying to bring together the intersect of where there are aggregate amounts of PII, basically the private, sensitive, important stuff your customer cares about, where, and together with where the devices that stuff lives on are demonstrating vulnerability through a traditional vulnerability management scan. So everything that floats to the top right in the orange section is where you should focus your time and energy, because that's where the intersect is and where those two things are demonstrated. It also gives you a top at-risk host list here on the right-hand side. And when you're asking yourself, hey, we've only got so much time and my customer only has so much money to give me to remediate and provide security updates through patching, where do I spend my time? Well, this is the hit list of the things in that environment from an endpoint perspective that are most vulnerable and have the most stuff on them that counts. Because this platform is not a snapshot in time solution, we are ongoing scanning, what we would consider near real time. The scheduling can be chosen by the MSP or their customer to understand how frequently they want things scanned. We can track and trend what's going on in that environment. So if we look here, and I'll just scroll over the month of August, you can see in blue on this bar chart, the new net new risks and vulnerabilities that have been identified in the month of August that have come into that environment. In orange, you can see the net carried vulnerabilities that have yet to be remediated for whatever reason. And in green, it's showing what has actively been remediated out of that environment in the month of August. So this is an important thing for an MSP. And of course, you can click into this and produce all the reporting for remediated by month, new by month, etc., to produce all the details, because MSPs find themselves in a weird paradox. When an MSP does a good job and they beaver away in the background, they're doing all the things to prevent the fires from popping up in a customer environment. But if that goes on and they do a good job, the customer starts asking themselves, well, we never see these guys. What are we paying them for? That's the weird paradox that an MSP creates for themselves. Do a good job, get themselves fired. Not good. So when you're doing your quarterly business reviews, you can go to your customer and demonstrate, here, Mr. Customer, this is the awesome stuff we're doing for you month in and month out in the background quietly, to prevent you from having to see us, because if you see us, there's a fire and nobody wants fires.
Mhm.
So we also scan, as part of the vulnerability module, to CIS benchmark controls 1 and 2. So I'm showing that over here on the right. And this is where we will scan and try to find areas of improvement for how the devices in your customer environment have been deployed from a configuration standpoint. So we'll measure against CIS benchmark controls, and we'll make recommendations in the product, and I'll show you where we do that later, about where improvements for device deployment can be made in order to harden that device in the environment. Now, this is cool. We also do a data cost understanding, and I'm going to pivot to a different screen, Stephen, to explain this.
Okay.
So as part of our platform, we ingest IBM's cost of breach research and simply run the multiplication. First, we've found all the important stuff in the environment by type and quantity. And then we multiply the numbers that IBM gives us in their report to come up with a real world market understanding street value of the dollars and cents that that customer has from a risk and liability standpoint. So you can see here, we come at it a couple of different ways for demonstration and reporting purposes. Here, I'm scrolled over a particular endpoint in that environment. In this case, it's their Office 365 tenant. And we're demonstrating what types of PII have been found and classified on that endpoint in the instance count. And then we run the math to provide the dollars and cents in relation to business risk and liability. So we do the same thing down here, but you can pick a PII type, and then it'll do the reverse and show you on which endpoints that PII type was found in what instance counts and quantities, and then run the math to get the dollar figures. And in here, we give you a quick list of top sources with PII, break out the PII types that were found in the quantities and instance counts, and run the math here. Now, this is a great tool for an MSP during their quarterly business reviews to take their best practices recommendations that are usually technology conversations and turn those into business risk and liability and dollars and cents discussions, because that is the language that their C-level decision makers at their customers speak every day. They don't speak technology. So those recommendations, technology-wise, often go stale because the customer doesn't know how to make a decision on something they don't understand. But what they do understand is dollars and cents and business risk and liability. So you have the option to bring that to them and change the conversation.
So can we pause here for a sec?
Yeah, of course.
All right. So I want to have a conversation about the dollars and cents thing. It feels like FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Now, I'm saying it feels like it. I'm not saying it is. Okay. And the reason I'm not saying it is because there's some certainty here. Like, you're saying, look, we know you have all these records. Here's what we think it would cost if you had a breach.
Correct.
So how do you recommend an MSP approach this so that way it doesn't feel like we're using FUD? Because I know a lot of MSPs hate the idea of FUD, and they might shy away from Cavelo entirely because they just don't want to be associated with that.
Yeah, I get your statement for sure. And the reason that we are confident in presenting this to the world is because it's not us picking numbers. It's IBM. They spend millions and millions of dollars every year to update their research. And we're simply ingesting those numbers. The other thing we do is behind the scenes, an MSP can change the dollar values on a per PII type granular way. So if they don't want to use IBM's numbers, and really it's a baseline understanding, it's a place to have a conversation. It's as realistic a number as the market can give us these days. It's not us picking the numbers. We would never do that. But we do give the levers and the buttons to change the per PII dollar amounts if the customer wants to alter that, or the MSP feels they should alter that behind the scenes to create whatever they believe is an accurate representation of the risk and liability in dollars and cents.
Okay. Let's dive back in. Thank you, Kris.
Yeah, of course. All right, so I'm going to pivot here and show you the data discovery and classification module itself. So from a technology standpoint, our solution is SaaS delivered, agent backed, and I'll explain that. So the dashboarding that you're looking at here is created in our AWS backend. So that would be the SaaS part. But because we do what we do need to deploy an agent onto what we would consider any device with a real operating system. So Windows, Mac, or Linux. We still can scan any device that we might consider IoT that has an IP address but isn't a device with a real operating system, but we can't put an agent on it. Now, the reason we need an agent is because we need credentialed scanning in order to do and get the most reliable vulnerability management scans done. Doing it over the network is less reliable and you get less data. And to do data discovery and classification, we have designed our solution to never copy, move, or exfil any of your customers' private sensitive information. So we do the heavy lifting with our agent from a data discovery and classification standpoint on the devices themselves, so that we don't have to move any of the original source material, copy it, or move it off the device in any way. We would become a security problem if we did that. That is not something that we have chosen to do. What we're doing is discovering it, classifying it, wrapping metadata from around it, and sending the metadata hashed up to our AWS instance to be presented as information in a dashboard that a human can understand. So we are an air-gapped indexing from a technology standpoint of the important and private sensitive stuff in your customer environment. We never copy, move, or exfil it in how we do it. That's an important note. So you can see that the goal of the platform is to shine a light in the dark, scary corners of your customer's environment. Doesn't matter what endpoint type it is. You can see that we connect via API to some of the what we would consider cloud-based data repositories that your customers may use. You can see some examples across the top of the screen, so that we can create a master inventory of all of the data files in your customer's environment, no matter where it lives. Once we have that master inventory, then we'll scan through it and mark and flag and classify what can be considered PII types. We start with NIST's cybersecurity framework and the PII types that it gives us, and then we add many other frameworks and types like CMMC and GDPR, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to build out a great understanding of what is PII type anywhere in North America. So states and provinces, et cetera, all taken care of in relation to their specific types of PII as well.
Cool.
Yes.
All right. So more questions.
Of course.
You said that we can change the amount of the dollar figures for the different types of PII.
Yeah.
How would we do that?
Behind the scenes, there is a way to do that. In this demo environment, Stephen, I hate to tell you that I am not capable of showing that to you.
Oh, they've got you handcuffed, huh?
Yeah, I'm just a glorified sales guy. But if I did have admin access as a user, I could show that feature.
Okay.
But yeah, it is a couple of clicks and easy to do. You simply change the record of what the dollar amount is associated to a particular PII type.
Okay. And then let's go back to compliance for a moment. You mentioned that this is CIS controls 1 and 2.
Correct.
Now, I know CIS controls has implementation groups. How does this align with those?
So as part of our vulnerability management scanning module, we are simply searching for the records in relation to how devices are deployed. And then we will find where they are not meeting best practices. And I can show you that when I pivot to the vulnerability module.
Great.
Yeah. One more thing I wanted to touch on in this section, and that is we had some requests along the way from our partner community, because they know that we're already creating a master inventory of the data in a customer environment. They said, hey, one of the challenges that we see all the time is data management with our clients. Can you find duplicate files in our customer environments? And we said, well, sure we can, because we already have all that information behind the scenes hashed. So we can go ahead and find things like duplicate files in the environment, even if those files are named differently. It doesn't matter. And we'll show how many copies in which places on which endpoints are those duplicates. So for data management, where customers say, hey, we're chewing up all of our production disk. Can you help us figure out how to lighten that load and not use up as much storage? Many MSPs scratch their heads about how to approach that. Well, now we have a very easy way to do it. And further to that, we also have the ability to search for files past a certain date that you choose. So you can help your customer's finance department only keep the 7 years of records that they're required to, rather than the 12 that they've already got. So if there's files that are have not been touched or modified in any way past the date that you've chosen, now you have a place to start a discussion with your customer about, can we archive this? Can we delete this in order to recoup some of your primary production disk?
Interesting.
Yeah, and that's just a bit of an add-on feature that our partners requested in discussions with them about the functionality of the platform.
Okay. Now, being able to look for duplicate files, I mean, that's neat. I don't know that that would be a feature that sells it to an MSP, if that makes sense.
Yeah, consider it additionally injected value, just because we already had the information and now we've chosen to present it as a nice extra feature.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So why don't we talk about so we talked about like the data discovery and classification piece.
Yeah.
I know that you also have risk-based vulnerability management and identity access management.
Mm-hmm.
So which one of those makes the most sense to pivot to?
I'm going to go to the vulnerability management scanning piece. That is a cornerstone of what we do. Oftentimes there are MSP practices that may be a little smaller and they don't have a formal VM practice. And this is a great way for them to get into an inexpensive but very good solution. I want to highlight here for you, Stephen, and your audience, that what we are not from a vulnerability management scanning standpoint is a fancy UI wrapper around freeware. Okay, there are many other tools in the market that may be. We are not that. We have our own proprietary engine because we needed something very efficient and very small footprint in order to do the vulnerability management scanning. And we ingest many paid feeds. We pay hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for the information from the professional feed folks in the vol scanning space. So we are comparable to the big vulnerability management legacy players out there that may start with a Q or a T that many of your audience might be familiar with. So we are trying to be the kinder, gentler vendor to provide an easy to deploy, easy to admin, easy to afford way to do professional vulnerability management scanning in your customer environments. And we're doing it in conjunction with the other features of our platform because we understand that vendor consolidation and streamlining the amount of licensing and stuff that you need to do as an MSP is important. And the amount of administrative touches of various portals also costs, because the more that you touch things as an administrator in the MSP world, the less goes to your bottom line.
Okay.
So from a vol scanning standpoint, you can imagine that we provide all of the information that a professional top-notch vol scanning solution would do. You can see that we consolidate all of the CVE information. We measure against CVSS version 2 and version 3. Version 4, as many people watching this may know, is, I'm going to say, consolidating and solidifying in the market now. It is not ready for prime time, and none of the feeds that we pay for have included it yet because of it. But when they do, we will also include it. And we also measure against the exploit predictive scoring system, the EPSS. So this gives our users of our platform a couple of lenses to focus their time and energy on. So many people that have done vol scanning realize that it can be a fire hose of noise, and they have no idea how to focus their time and energy on what to do first. So most people may start with the CVSS scoring and just start at the 10s and do the 9s and the 8s and so on. And that is traditionally the way that it's done. But what you really want to do is understand, okay, where are the severe exploits? Okay, that's where CVSS comes in. Great. But now with EPSS and the vulnerability parameters here on the left, you can say to the solution, filter me down to everything with a CVSS and EPSS score of 7 or greater. So all of a sudden you've gone from 1,700 found records to 17. And now you've got something you can bite off and chew, and it is the stuff that really counts, because EPSS basically says all exploits that have a high EPSS score are actively being exploited in the wild today. And if left unaddressed, it has a very high percentage that it will be exploited. So you need to focus your time and energy here. And of course, Stephen, we've got the two lenses, right? How severe is this exploit, and how exploitable is it? And where is the important stuff in your customer environment from a device standpoint? Which devices house the important stuff? And when you put that together with CVSS and EPSS, now you got a three-legged stool that doesn't fall over, that you can start making some smart decisions about where and how to spend your time as an MSP to best use that to protect your customers.
Okay. Now, when looking at this, there's like a lot going on here, and who would you say is your target MSP? Because I suspect a lot of the smaller MSPs, their eyes are going to glaze over at this, and they're just not going to do it.
So because our platform is modular from a licensing standpoint, MSPs, no matter what size they are, can consume only the section of their choosing in the quantity that they choose to. So there are smaller MSPs, and we would consider a small MSP that might make use of our platform in this sort of, let's call it 1 to 5 million in overall revenue as a business kind of zone. They might be interested in just the vulnerability management module.
Mm-hmm.
As you go upstream, there are MSPs that are in this sort of 5 to 50 million neighborhood that take advantage of the data discovery and classification features, because their customers might be larger, a little bit more sophisticated, and are required to do the due diligence questionnaires related to their cyber insurance and be certified and compliant against 1, 2, 3 different frameworks, et cetera, et cetera. And all of those things are drivers and motivators to know what important information is in the environment, on which devices, in what types and quantities, how that's vulnerable, and of course, what to do about it, and who's got access to it, and what have they been doing with it. That's what we do.
Now, I have to assume that since this is made for MSPs, that this does like multi-tenancy and has role-based access controls, and I mean,
Correct.
you're limited as to what you can do in the thing. So
Yes. Yes, exactly right. Yes. So yes, there's role-based access control. Yes, of course, it's multi-tenanted from day one in its design. Um, uh, SSO is available through the platform, as is multi-factor authentication. All of the typical things that any MSP would expect from a vendor product is in place already and ready for consumption.
now let's look at compliance and regulatory frameworks. I know that you said it meets CIS controls 1 and 2. What about our clients who maybe are they've got HIPAA or NIST, ISO, PCI DSS? How does this align with those?
Yeah. So really, it is searchable by PII type. So when you know and understand what PII types are required for those frameworks, you can simply search and report on what exists in the environment associated to whose device in what quantities and types, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very straightforward.
And then how does it handle vulnerability exceptions and false positives?
Great question. Yes, there is a whitelisting capability in the platform itself. When you have something that has been found and you know for whatever reason you need to ignore it, and you can set a timer on how long you want to ignore it. For instance, if you have a server in a customer environment that is running a line of business application, that line of business application is legacy and requires a particular operating system, and you can't upgrade and patch away from that operating system, but you know in the future you're going to migrate that out to the cloud as a replacement, that vulnerability will still be found because it's a glaring problem, but you are chosen to whitelist that and accept that business risk with your customer for that period of time because you know that project for upgrade is coming up. You can do many things like that in the platform in order to, let's call it, temporarily ignore a known business risk that the solution has found because you know that there is going to be something that happens with it down the road to remediate that.
Now, you said that this pairs nicely with a MDR, XDR, EDR. Does it integrate with any of the security tools that these more established 1 million and up MSPs are probably using, like SIM, SOAR, that type of thing?
Yes, so we do have API-based integrations with the, let's call it, primary collection of PSA platforms that the MSP might be using and or other products, as well as what we would consider cloud connectors, is what we call the ability to connect to a customer's Box.com or Office 365 or G Suite or iManage tenants where they store data. We also have an open API that we can easily integrate with new products and platforms upon partner request for their customers in order to provide a complete coverage. And we do that all the time. We receive feedback from our partners about the types of places where their customers are storing data, and we just write an API-based cloud connector to get to that data.
And I see, looking at your website, some logos pop up here that are very familiar when it comes to your integrations. So I see you've got Google Workspace and Microsoft 365, Salesforce, AWS, ServiceNow, Box.
Yep.
What about the people who are using Dropbox?
Yep. Dropbox is a cloud data repository connector that is currently in our roadmap.
Okay.
Yeah, we
So
have many of those currently being debbed out now upon partner request.
gotcha. Is there once somebody becomes a partner, is the roadmap visible?
Most definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, part of our onboarding process is to meet with a new partner and give them the roadmap. And that is selfish on our part because we want partner feedback as to how to steer this ship. We don't presume to know where this thing needs to go. Our
Mhm.
partners are in the trenches, boots on the ground, and they know the reality of what is required in the market. So we want partner feedback in order to take this platform to where it's actually needed, and so that our partners can be the most successful when using it.
Okay. Let's take a look at the identity access management stuff.
Sure. So this is the portion of the platform that allows an understanding about who in your customer environment has access to the crown jewels and what have they been doing with it. So using the resource parameters on the left-hand side, by the way, this takes information from on-premises servers as well as any cloud tenants like Office 365 or G Suite, and we can marry that together and understand exactly what's happening. As long as there's logs we can ingest, we can create this permission results information. So we can understand and search for things like pick a user in the customer environment and understand what that user has access to in the environment. Pick a resource or an endpoint and understand which users have access to it. And then we can also search and create an audit access report to demonstrate what the users that have access to things have been doing with the things they have access to. So scenarios like your customer calls you up and says, hey, we're going to be exiting this particular employee on this date. Please watch what's going on with this user until the time that we give him that notice, and then watch what he's doing in particular and output that as a report in the 2 weeks where he's serving his notice period. Things like that. And or your customer calls you and says, hey, Sally in marketing swears up and down she didn't destroy this very important spreadsheet. And of course, you can go back into the logs and records here and simply search for that user and find, well, she did last Friday at 4 o'clock, delete that important spreadsheet. So there's a number of different use cases that MSPs can use this information in order to demonstrate important things. The use of this is you need to understand where the crown jewels are. You need to understand how those are vulnerable. And you also need to understand what the privileged access model is in order to drive it down to the least possible amount so there's not accidental exposures because everybody has access to everything. Not a good policy. So you need to be able to A, have visibility to it in order to do something about it. And that's what we're trying to do. This platform is all about visibility to data and understanding and insights about how to proceed in order to secure things through proactive remediation and collaborative discussions with your customer.
Awesome. So I know that you have the agent, and then you've got the ability to link up with some of the cloud solutions, and then I even saw AWS on there. So I suspect if a client is running like some virtual machines in AWS or Azure, we should just install the agent on those servers, right?
That's correct. Yeah, treat it like any other endpoint.
Okay. So when you say you integrate with AWS, is that referring to your ability to connect to like the S3 buckets?
That also, yes.
Okay, great. So you do on-premise, cloud, hybrid, multi-cloud. You basically do it all for systems and environments.
That's exactly right. Yeah, the goal, like I said before, is to shine a light in all the dark, scary corners so that nothing can bite you, right? You need to understand what's important so that you can figure out how to protect it. And everybody puts up their castle walls and their blinders and hopes for the best. You really need to ask yourself as an MSP. And MSPs have traditionally gone to the endpoint and stopped there. The domain of peeking into what that endpoint holds has always been the customers because there's liability factors. But these days, you as an MSP can differentiate yourself and your practice by bringing information about what the customer's actual world looks like from a data perspective to them, because I guarantee you they don't know it. So you can look like a magician and stand out and differentiate yourself by showing them, hey, this is where your important stuff lives. This is how it's vulnerable and how we're going to focus on making that vulnerability less for you, because now we have the ability to see and focus upon those. And here's the picture of your user access And there are areas of improvement that can be had here in order to drive your risk and liability down. So now we're going to take this upon, and let me be clear, Stephen, we are a product and a platform. MSPs are the service. Wrap their professional services around the insights that our platform creates to generate net new revenue projects and professional services opportunities. This is a moneymaker.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, my questions that I have for identity access management platforms, my questions don't seem to align with what you've shown me.
Okay.
My questions are all kind of around like identity providers. So, or like directory services, like does this integrate with Active Directory, Azure AD, LDAP, LDAP?
So not in the way that you're thinking, and I understand
Right.
your confusion about identity access management solutions. We are not that in a traditional sense. We are simply trying to provide visibility to who's got access to what and what they've been doing with it, in order for any MSP to ask themselves, does this make sense? Or take it to their customers and say, does this make sense? And if not, have the opportunity to proactively remediate and reduce access for users that shouldn't have access to certain things in order to lessen the security footprint, right? This is, it's a catch-all term, but I'm going to use it anyway. We are effectively trying to understand what the overall customer's attack surface is.
Gotcha.
So we provide an understanding around all of these various areas in order to have an MSP interpret that and bring that information to their customer, have a conversation about what needs to be done, and then go ahead and do those remediation tasks.
In my ignorance, and I'll plead ignorance, it seems like your product competes closely with SaaS alerts, and your product feels like SaaS alerts on expert mode.
I honestly can't tell you because I know of the product. I am not familiar enough with it to make a comment. Our platform, because we do a number of key things under one umbrella, is we cross over in a number of different areas, right? There are a number of different providers that just do data discovery and classification, or just do vulnerability management, or just do identity access management. We've tried to philosophically take the 30% of the sort of larger legacy products that are out there that most MSPs either can't afford or don't like because they're not channel focused companies, and put that together under one umbrella that is designed to bring these things to an MSP in North America to service their small, medium business clients. That is us philosophically.
All right.
And that's about all I have to show you in the platform. It's pretty straightforward.
I gotta say, I like this picture here, the data risk by host.
Yeah.
It resonates well with me. Mainly, we've got our stack chart spotlight we do every Monday.
Yes.
And we've got a chart. It's not as colorful, but it's the same kind of thing. We always tell MSPs, if you see a company in the top right quadrant, those are companies that should definitely be on your list to check out for this category. So you do the same thing. Top right quadrant. These are the machines or vulnerabilities that you need to tackle right away.
Yes, the goal of this summary screen is we know time is money for an MSP. So land here, understand where you need to spend your time on the top at-risk host list, remediate, move on.
All right.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that we have any questions coming in from the audience, but that's okay. I still have plenty of questions, sir.
Okay, great.
All right. So earlier I asked you how you integrate with some tools, and I mentioned like a SIM or a SOAR, and you mentioned that you integrate with PSAs, but I didn't really hear if you integrate with like a SIM or a SOAR.
Via Open API. People can ingest anything out of our platform from any module in any way they like into any platform that they want, because it's an open API, as long as the other platform has the ability to integrate with an open API. Most do. So if an MSP is already using a BI tool or a dashboarding tool, which many are already, they can ingest anything from our platform to be presented in whatever way they want.
So, what makes Cavelo's approach to Chasm or cyber asset attack surface management unique compared to other solutions in the market for MSPs?
Yep, great question. We are designed to be super simple to deploy and administrate. The agents themselves, and yes, we have taken into account that there's a thing in the world called agent fatigue, not another agent, but we've designed our agent to be to the tough framework. So from a security standpoint, it's bulletproof. Also, it does its own updates for both features and security updates. So once an MSP has deployed it with their RMM of their choice, set it and forget it. So you never have to worry about it again as an MSP. So you're not having to administrate it, touch it, and make sure that it's constantly doing something. And not only that, but the platform itself is trying to bring together multiple functionalities that you'd otherwise have to contract from various vendors and licenses under one platform designed for MSPs from day one. We're trying to make it easy and bring these functionalities, which we would consider proactively left of boom, to the forefront for an MSP in order to make them stand out and look like a bit of a magician, because this is something relatively new for people.
What kind of support and resources does Cavelo provide to MSPs to help them effectively market, sell, and deliver your solution to our end customers?
Great question. Yep. So from a support standpoint, we have a support team. They're pretty fantastic. They're also the white glove onboarding folks. So when you first sign up with us as a platform, we help you get off the ground. They also will help you set up your first number of customers. And from a getting the customer standpoint, myself and the rest of the channel team from a sales perspective will help you do virtual 4-legged demos to generate interest in pipeline and sell those first number of licenses through to a set of your customers. Also, from a marketing perspective, we do have all kinds of sales collateral. We do have we call it a virtual 2 to 3 minute self-guided click-through tour of the platform that MSP reps can use to generate interest in their customer base. We are not the throw a PO over the fence and run away type vendor. We want to get involved with you and help you be successful on our platform. It only benefits both of us to do so.
Wonderful. How long does onboarding take usually?
Great question. So every MSP is given whatever NFR licensing they want for their own internal needs. So part of the onboarding process is we help you deploy your internal deployment. And that can be quite simple. We'll show you where to download the agent. We'll set up your tenant for you. We'll add the users that you would like to have access to that tenant. You push out the agents with your RMM tool. Once they register back to the platform tenant, we'll set up the first set of scans, and all of that can take as little as half an hour. The scans need to take the time to run. Depending on how much data is being done, it can take somewhere between half an hour and a day or two. And then we come back together for another half an hour meeting and review the initial set of scans and start doing some training with the administrators in that MSP's environment. It's pretty straightforward.
It sounds easy.
It's easier than you think it should be. I'll leave it with that.
Fair. Let's talk pricing.
Sure.
So what kind of investment is the MSP looking for each of these modules?
Yeah. So our minimum license account is 200. So we do have a minimum but that's not hard to achieve for most MSPs these days. We've priced it in such a way that the motivation is there to just add it to your technology stack and try to deploy it en masse across as many of your endpoints under management across various customers as possible. The pricing is modular, so the functionality being data discovery and classification is a module, vulnerability management is a module, and identity access is a module. Each of those can be licensed separately in varying quantities. But I will leave you with this. It's similarly priced per endpoint per month to a decent antivirus. It is made to be a few dollars a month per endpoint for full functionality, and then break it out from there, and it only gets less expensive.
Okay.
Yeah, it is designed to be, again, for the North American MSP to have their customers say yes to it, because it's inexpensive to just include it across the board to all of your endpoints under management, and for an MSP to be quite profitable in doing so.
Wonderful. What type of commitment is there?
Initial licensing purchase is 1 year, and then it's month to month after that.
Okay, great. Is there an onboarding or setup fee?
All of that is gratis.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta say, I'm impressed. You've got a great looking product. It's powerful without being overly confusing. Sure, it's easy for your eyes to glaze over if you don't really know what you're doing when it comes to looking at all of the different vulnerabilities. I would say that one thing that I would love to get a better understanding of is like, all right, great. So I see all these vulnerabilities. How do I address them?
Right. Yeah. And so our approach is we are data insights and visibility. We will focus time and attention and send that focus as workflows in ticket form out to be remediated. Most MSPs have already made their preferential choices for the tool that they use to do their patching. So we don't want to provide duplication in that regard, because they already have their preference. But what we will do is send to their ticketing system and their RMM focus what to do. And we also have a workflow where they can assign resources as tasks before we send it across to be remediated to whatever solution they're using, in order to focus that time. So we can help focus to reduce that fire hose into something manageable, and then send that to be remediated with the system that they already have.
And look, I agree. MSPs are picky when it comes to what tools they want to use.
Yes.
So I love that you are making it easy for us to do the work ourselves using our chosen tools. But that was what I was looking for, is we tell you what needs done.
Yeah.
So, Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge, you need to update to at least this version in order to fix this vulnerability. That's going to solve the problem. That'll make this yellow exclamation point or red X into a green check mark.
Yes.
And that's exactly what I needed to hear. So thank you.
You bet.
Cool. Well, Kris, is there anything else that you think MSPs should know before we part?
Yeah, I would send them to Channel Program's webpage and have them look up Cavelo, and we have a fully populated information set there for them to understand a little bit more about who we are and how to work with us. But you're more than welcome to reach out to me directly at kris.shoemaker@cavelo.com. I am happy to have a chat. That's what we're here for, right? Nobody can use us if they don't know about us, so come find out.
Absolutely. And to go with the channel program website, we've also got reviews on there. Although we need to get some reviews for Cavelo. So if you're a user of Cavelo, definitely head over to the channel program website, search for Cavelo, leave a product review, let us know what you think of it, because that'll help MSPs understand, pros, cons, caveats they should be aware of. I'm sure you can agree, Kris, that no software is perfect, right?
Yep. It's
otherwise Apple would have taken over the computer world by now.
It's what you do with your imperfections and how quickly you listen to those that are saying there needs improvement. And
Exactly.
that is what we strive to do.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for hopping on here and doing this with me. I can't wait to, see in 6 to 12 months what new features you guys have come up with. So please keep it coming and keep us posted.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate the time today. And it was nice to do this for your audience and the whole channel program world.
I agree completely. Thanks, Kris. You all have yourselves a great one. And Friday we are doing a demo with QuoteWorks. So come hop on that on Friday. You can find it on YouTube and LinkedIn. Take care, everybody.